Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I am Sherrod Blakely, joined by Ethan Sands of Cleveland.com, as well as tell us your name of your podcast.
The Wine and Gold Talk podcast.
I knew the colors. I wanted to make sure I got the order right, so I'll make sure you do that part because you know the order much better than I do, as well as you know about these Cavs better than me and most people do. Before we get too deep into our conversation, because we'll be talking a lot about the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are the team many believe will come out of the East this year. Just a reminder, folks who are listening, that this is the Big Three NBA podcast as part of the CLNS Media Network family. What we do would not be possible without great partners like Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. We'll talk a little bit more about them later, but download the app today and get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. We are just going to cannonball our way into the conversation and talk about these Cleveland Cavaliers who, for most who follow the NBA, they are one of, if not the favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference this year. And when you look at one of the big reasons for that is because of the players they have coming back. Unfortunately, or fortunate, depending if you're the other 29 teams in the NBA, they will not be at full strength to start the season. Max Strus is going to be out with that Jones foot injury, and Darius Garland, even though they've kind of left it a little bit open that maybe he'll be back early to start the season, he's probably not going to be ready for opening night. So I guess what I want to just really start off the bat with you, Ethan, is just talking about what does their absence mean to the start of the season for Cleveland, who, as you know, and most of us who follow the league, they're pretty high expectations for that team this year.
Yeah, well, you mentioned cannonball inning this episode, so let's start here. I honestly think the Cavs could end up being better off in the long run for having to deal with these particular injuries early on in the season. Obviously, you never want to start the year without two starters, but these absences are forcing Cleveland to lean into something they've needed for a while now: structure and size balance in the lineups. Without Darius Garland and Max Strus, as you mentioned, the projected starters are Donovan Mitchell, Sam Merrill, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen. And they're more positionally sound than we've seen in years, Sherrod. Everyone fits their natural spot, and that helps defensively and obviously on the glass. And because of that, they'll be forced to reestablish their defensive identity, something that always has been their backbone, especially with their two Twin Towers lineup. You see them lean heavily into the aggressiveness and activity, more deflections, more lengthened passing lanes, and more opportunities to stop or to turn stops into offense. That's where Kenny Atkinson's system connects both ends of the floor.
Yeah, and the one thing that we've seen in the past when teams have not begun the season at full strength is someone's got to get those minutes, and someone has to fill that void, particularly when you're talking about guys who have been, really good impact players. When you look at the way this Cleveland roster is assembled, and you look at the guys who are going to get a chance to play a little bit more, who jumps out or stands out to you as far as folks who will fill the void that'll be left without a Garland to start the season, without a Strus to start the season?
Well, you kind of said it there, right? Because we know that you can't just replace what Darius Garland does. He's one of the best half-court creators in basketball. His ability to manipulate the spaces and with his dribble moves, his pull multiple defenders, and obviously his spray passes out to the shooters when he gets into the lane is elite. So this isn't just about one guy stepping up, Sherrod. It's about a collective effort, and Kenny Atkinson's already been building that system. He's emphasized the pace, the quick outlets, and early offense. Whoever grabs the rebound or is closest to the ball can initiate and bring the ball up the floor. So I do think that there will be guys that you will see coming into this season that haven't gotten a whole lot of opportunities. Lonzo Ball, who we know hasn't played more than 35 games in a single season since 2021, he'll get some opportunities, but we also know he's not going to play in back-to-backs. Jaylen Tyson, coming into his second season, he'll be a guy that'll be in the small forward / shooting guard kind of lineup, but also bringing the ball up the floor. And then Craig Porter Jr. is a guy that will be doing this as well. But obviously, there are also players like Sam Merrill and Evan Mobley. And Evan Mobley, as we will get into more on this show, I do think that Evan Mobley is going to be the biggest factor in all of this because of what he means to the second unit and him getting to play in those different scenarios this year, different from what he had last year.
Yeah, one of the guys who was kind of a wild card for you guys last year, and we're talking with Ethan Sands of Cleveland.com and the Wine and Gold podcast. One of the guys that we talked a little bit about last season, who was kind of an X Factor wild card type, was DeAndre. And looking at his role now and looking at some of the pieces that won't be there, it seems like he will once again be one of those guys that could really make or break this team's title chances and things like that. With him getting an actual training camp under his belt, how important has that been, not only for his own development as a player, but just the continuity that I know him and the Cavs are looking for to have with him, definitely in the mix for what they do going forward?
Sherrod, I want to take you back to last year,
Take
right?
me back to last year. In the
When the
epic,
Cavs
you can say it, time machine. Here we go. Let's go.
when the Cavs traded for DeAndre Hunter before last year's trade deadline, they saw a long-term answer at the wing, a two-way player who could finally help them stand up to the East's most physical teams like New York, Orlando, and at this time, of course, Boston. The problem was he never got the runway to settle in. He had one full practice before heading into the playoff series against Miami. That's it. So he was playing catch up in a brand new system. And honestly, he felt more needed than wanted at that point after having conversations with DeAndre and people in the organization. This offseason flipped that dynamic completely. For Kenny Atkinson, it was based around building with DeAndre, relationship, rhythm, understanding. And Kenny Atkinson was literally sending him film at 2 or 3 in the morning, picking his brain on how he sees certain actions, where he's most comfortable operating, and all of that work matters, right? But it's about finding the pockets within the offense where DeAndre can be decisive instead of reactive. And look, the early numbers told you what the eye test hinted at. When DeAndre Hunter shared the floor with the core four, Sherrod, the Cavs were ridiculous. We're talking 100 percentile in net and offensive rating and 99 percentile defensively. The issue is that sample size was tiny, barely over 80 possessions combining the regular season and the postseason. But now, as we mentioned, with Darius likely returning sooner than Max Strus, we'll finally get to see what a full-strength starting lineup of featuring DeAndre Hunter and the core four looks like across an extended stretch. Every contender needs a fit guy, not just someone who fills a role, but someone who sharpens your identity. That's DeAndre for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He gives Cleveland a confident scorer and a positional defender who looks more natural at the three than he ever did at the four last season. And if we're being honest, more natural at the three than Max Strus ever has at the three when he's been with the Cavs for the last couple of seasons. But the most important thing that DeAndre Hunter brings to this offense that the Cavs have been needing is a safety valve when the offense doesn't click perfectly or a play simply breaks down. And that's important in Kenny Atkinson's free-flowing offense because it's not going to hum every position, especially when you don't have two starters to start the season. It's going to get clunky. It's going to get misinformed. But when it doesn't work, DeAndre Hunter and Evan Mobley will have to become the stabilizers. They can get to a spot, rise up, and execute. That's exactly what DeAndre needs to do this season.
Yeah, when I look at his play, even though they're different players, but I look at just the role and impact of guys, and that's often where I try to draw comparisons. And when I look at what he means to Cleveland, what he can do for that team, it reminds me a lot of the Boston Celtics, Derek White. He's not going to be your number one, or he may not be your number two option, but he may be the best number three option if you're talking about a championship caliber team relative to the roster that you have. And you touched on it a little bit earlier about just some of the things he can do. And I think I know the answer to this question, but I want you to elaborate on it, if you will. What do you see DeAndre bringing to the table that will benefit the Cavs most? Because he is an extremely versatile, multifaceted player. He can do a lot of different things out there. But what's the one thing that you believe he can bring to this Cavaliers team that gives him the best chance of being the last team standing when all's said and done?
I mean, that ability to attack mismatches and create late in the clock, right? Because obviously we know in the postseason, the defense is going to ramp up. It's going to be harder to get the ball on the floor, even though the Cavs might emphasize that in the regular season. It's just simply going to be more difficult when it comes to the playoffs. And that's what keeps the offense balanced and takes pressure off Donovan Mitchell, is having a player like DeAndre Hunter be able to create in those scenarios. It's the difference between being a team that hopes for flow and one that can survive when it breaks down. DeAndre is the guy who bridges that gap.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And for those who are listening to this, this is the Big Three NBA podcast, part of the CLNS Media Network, which is where you'll find the Big Three NBA podcast, past and present, as well as other great Celtics content. We're talking with Ethan Sands of Cleveland.com and the Wine and Gold podcast. Ethan, we're just keep moving on. We're going to get to one of the big stories of this season when you talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that is your All-NBA wing, Donovan Mitchell, and apparently your potential MVP candidate, Evan Mobley. Donovan Mitchell was all NBA last season and poised to be a little bit more of a playmaker early on with Garland out, obviously. And then you've got Evan Mobley, who I think started to show us flashes of just how incredibly gifted a player he can be. And we're going to talk a lot more about that right after this brief pause in the conversation to talk about one of our good friends, which is Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win cash. It is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. You can also follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in one click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone whose picks you like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. And now, between now and the 21st, there's a special max discount promotion live on the board for the Golden State Warriors versus Los Angeles Lakers game on October 21st. Steph Curry, yes, that man, that dude, is discounted to only needing more than half a point to win. And Steph, pretty much when he walks in the building, is going to get you more than a point. Mix and match that particular projection with other players, whether it's football, basketball, esports, you name it, baseball. Prize Picks has you covered, and build your dream lineup today. How do you get in? It's very simple. You just download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. We are back with Ethan Sands. And Ethan, as we started to allude to earlier, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley dynamic and just the role that plays in this Cavaliers team going forward. As we mentioned earlier, Donovan was all NBA last season. Evan Mobley, just a defensive beast who is poised to be even more impactful now that with another year under his belt. How do you see their relationship playing out going forward? Because Donovan has kind of been the alpha, and Evan was kind of here, the kid on the come up. And now there may be a little bit more balance in terms of their impact on winning at the highest level. How do you see their relationship evolving?
Okay, let's be clear. Donovan Mitchell's going to be Donovan Mitchell. He's still a top 15 player in this league, and he's shown he can dominate when it matters. But what's different here is his understanding of what it takes for Cleveland to win at the highest level. That means the NBA Finals, which means for him getting past the Eastern or Western Conference semifinals for the first time in his NBA career. The Cavs cannot win a championship with Donovan Mitchell as their best player. It has to be Evan Mobley. And the best part is Donovan Mitchell knows that. He's leaning into it. He's empowering Evan to take that next step, both in voice and in usage. With Darius out or limited early, as we know, Donovan will take on more point guard responsibilities in the de facto sense, but Kenny Atkinson doesn't want to necessarily burn him out. So that means leaning on Evan Mobley to handle more creation duties, as I was mentioning earlier. It's a shared approach designed to keep Donovan fresh and the offense unpredictable. Now, the system itself will have to flex itself without Darius and Max. Last season, the substitution pattern usually saw Evan and Donovan come out together early in the first quarter. This year, it'll probably flip to what was in the previous seasons. Donovan and Jarrett will sit first. Lonzo Ball and Dean Wade are the most projected to come off the bench first, and Evan becomes the offensive hub for that second unit. That's where his growth is really going to show. So the Evan is the key to making all of this work, right? Because they're putting him in more of a point big role, taking some pressure off of Donovan, allowing him to get more rest, allowing him to sit out, and allowing Evan to show you what he's been working on. Initiating from the top, pushing off rebounds, running inverted pick and rolls, whatever you might think that Evan Mobley is capable of, they're going to be running it this season. That's how you keep the offensive dynamic, even when your primary creators are off the floor. And yes, that means even when Donovan Mitchell is off the floor. So the Cavs don't want to fall into the trap of overusing Donovan or forcing him into superhero mode in October and November. That's not sustainable. The regular season slate is about balance, protecting Donovan's body, developing Evan's offense, all this other good stuff, right? But if this all works and this generates the flow that they want, Cleveland becomes far more dangerous long term.
You're right. And the thing about Donovan that I think most people don't realize, I mean, I know you do, is that last season, even though his impact, I think, in terms of winning was as great as it's been, he actually did it in fewer minutes. And that's something that I full disclosure, the idea that Donovan Mitchell is going to play fewer minutes and be a bigger impact player than he has been in the past was a bit of a mind-blowing head scratcher to a lot of us. How does that play out now, knowing that that worked, and yet you're probably going to need him to diversify his game even more so, because Donovan's always been a great scorer. He's going to have to be a little bit more of a playmaker early on than maybe he's been accustomed to needing to be. Is that going to mean that those minutes are going to creep up, or do you think they're going to try to keep him minutes-wise about where he was last season?
They're going to keep him where he was about last season for at least the first half of the year, right? The Cleveland Cavaliers and Kenny Atkinson spoke about this kind of going into the playoffs last year. They wanted to ramp Donovan Mitchell's minutes up last year closer to the playoff to get his body prepared to be able to play the grueling minutes of 35, 40, 45 minutes a night when it comes to the playoffs. But they were simply blowing teams out, and they didn't have the opportunity to, because it didn't make sense for them to keep him on the floor. Now we're talking about a season where they're going to want to kind of inch him closer to a higher number, but it's not going to happen early on into the season. So maybe after the trade deadline, where they get a better understanding of where everybody is in the Eastern Conference standings. But at the beginning of the season, it's going to be more about getting the offense to where they want it to be, and also letting him play as aggressive, as ferocious, as assertive as he wants to when he's on the floor, knowing that they're going to take him off for the allotted period that they have set up. They have a plan for everybody on this roster, but the two players that I think they have a bigger plan for are Lonzo Ball and Donovan Mitchell when it comes to the 2025-2026 season.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Lonzo for a minute, because I don't think people realize how important a player like him is on your team, particularly even if his minutes are somewhat limited. Because the more I start looking at some of the guys that are going to be impactful for Cleveland, it really does feel like this is Boston Celtics 2024 all over again. When you look at DeAndre Hunter, and you look at Derek White in Boston, you look at Lonzo Ball, I think about Al Horford, different type of players, but someone who has a very clear role, has certain minutes and playing limitations, but you're going to, that going in, so you can plan and project how you're going to utilize him. How do you see Lonzo Ball impacting his team? Because I think both agree. Last year, not having someone behind Darius Garland, that was a problem.
Man, I mean, you'd say it there, right? Like, they needed another ball creator when it comes to the second unit. And obviously, they're hoping that other guys are going to step up, especially because we know Lonzo Ball is not going to play in back-to-backs, at least to start the season. He's going to have a minute restriction of about 20, maybe 25 minutes, but that's pushing it, even that. The goal is for him, actually, let me say it this way. The Cavs are betting on 50 games played in the regular season from Lonzo Ball. They are hoping for him to play 60, right? That's the magic number for Lonzo Ball. For him personally, he wants to be able to play 60 games in a season, which makes sense, right? You've only played 35 over the last 4 years, right? So all these different things. But Lonzo Ball, his creation is super important. We saw it in the preseason finale against the Detroit Pistons. He was a guy that was able to give passes in ways that some of his teammates did not know the ball was coming until it was in his hands. Being able to have that vision, that offensive IQ, and also being a 6'6" guard playing next to Donovan Mitchell eliminates the backcourt size issue that they've had with Darius Garland, right? So kind of two stones or one bird, two stones, whatever, two birds, one stone, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think ideally the Cavs are looking at Lonzo Ball as an Alex Caruso type of player. Someone who can come in and disrupt defensively, create offensively, and be a guy that fills in the gaps. But the regular season, as we know for the Cleveland Cavaliers, is barely important. This is a team that needs to prove itself in the playoffs, not the regular season. Sure, do I think the Cavs will still be probably the top 3, if not the top 1 of the Eastern Conference? Yes, but that doesn't matter. It matters of how they show themselves in the playoffs. And for them to have success in the playoffs, Lonzo Ball needs to be healthy. And that's the main bottom line for them.
Absolutely. And a player that we had talked about a little bit earlier, Evan Mobley, who obviously lots of high expectations for him this year. Talk about being an early league MVP candidate. When you look at just the growth in his game from previous year to last season and look at where areas he still can get better at, what are some of the areas you see him being even more impactful in going forward in this year that, as you clearly stated, it's about
let me,
the playoffs.
Yeah, let's start here, right? I'm going to say it. Evan Mobley is going to finish top 5 in MVP voting this year. That's my thought process when it comes to this season, because the next step for him is simply assertiveness, the confidence to dominate possessions. Like Kenny Atkinson is giving him the space to read, react, and impose his will on every given possession down the floor. If there's a possession offensively where Evan Mobley's on the floor this year and he doesn't touch the ball, I will be shocked when they're working in the half court because of how much he means to this team and how much they are going to engage him to try and get him ready for those playoff scenarios, because he's going to have the ball in his hands. And that's part of the reason that part of the parts of his game that he worked on this summer so tirelessly. He expanded everything. Tighter handles, smoother three-point shot, and maybe most importantly, the confidence to take over from anywhere on the floor, as I was mentioning. We're watching him evolve, again, from a reactive player into an assertive player, and that shift changes everything for this team. Even if, as we can talk about this too, defensively, he's still going to be elite. There's no questions about that. He's coming off of a Defensive Player of the Year award, but Victor Wembanyama's coming back. If he wins the Defensive Player of the Year, and that's looking like it'll be a back and forth for years to come, I don't think that's going to take away from Evan's defensive impact either. And that's just going to push him to be even better offensively. And that's what's going to push him into the MVP conversation is his offensive control. When the game slows down, as it does in the playoffs, when the system breaks down, he's becoming the guy who can steady the offense, create advantages for himself and for his teammates. And like I said earlier, the Cavs cannot reach the NBA Finals just with Donovan Mitchell carrying the scoring load. For Cleveland to take the next step, getting past the Eastern Conference semifinals in the tenure of Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley has to be their best player, and I think this is the year he becomes exactly that.
The thing that you mentioned that I find interesting, because it's really been the only consistent knock against Evan, and that is that confidence to take over. The skill set, no one questions. The ability to score in a multitude of ways, no one questions. The ability to be a dominant impact player, both in terms of his man-to-man coverage and as a help side defender, no one questions that. The big question is, does he feel confident and comfortable enough to just take over games? What makes you feel confident that he is now confident enough to be that guy?
Just how he talks, like how he is operating with the media is different. Like how he is having and holding conversations and speaking about himself. There is a level of confidence in his voice. There's no change. There's no shakiness. There's no hesitation in answers. last year and years before, his teammates were in the back of interviews trying to pry the answer out of him, trying to beg him to say that he was Defensive Player of the Year. Who is it, Evan? Tell us who it is. And now he's just like, this is who I am. My goal is to retain Defensive Player of the Year. And I got a secret for you. I want to win something else, but I'm going to hold that for later. You know what that award is, Sherrod? You and I both know what that award is. MVP. That's what the caliber of player he thinks he is. And he is now embodying that, not only because of what Donovan Mitchell and Kenny Atkinson and all of his teammates say, but because he truly believes at 24 years old, which is insane, that he is the guy to take this franchise to the next level, back to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2018, and arguably with a better team than 2018 LeBron had.
I'm not even going to say arguably. I'm just going to say what it is. It is a better team than the one LeBron had. When you look at this Cavaliers team, I mean, there really aren't a lot of areas, particularly with what they've done in the last, I'd say, between the trade deadline of last year and this offseason. When you add Lonzo Ball, you add DeAndre Hunter, you've added guys that address areas that you were a little shaky in before. And that, to me, that's what championship caliber teams do. They absolutely meet the moment and make sure that their roster that they build also is ready to meet the moment. Something that here in Boston, we've seen that. And we've also seen what it looks like when you start to kind of dial it down and the sunset starts to set on that window. But the Celtics, this year, obviously no Jason Tatum. They traded away Porzingis. They traded away Drew Holiday. And they definitely, they're a very different team with no Jason Tatum for most, if not all, this season. Recovering from that Achilles injury he suffered in the playoffs. This will be a very different team. Much of the weight will fall upon the shoulders of Jaylen Brown, their other All-NBA wing. And my question to you, because you've seen enough of the Celtics and you've seen enough of Jaylen Brown to certainly answer this question. When you look at his game and you look at the things that he does, which do you think would be a bigger benefit to the Boston Celtics? And that would be Jaylen Brown becoming a better scorer, Jaylen Brown becoming a better passer, or Jaylen Brown becoming a better rebounder?
That's a great question. And I want to throw a wrench in the question just so I can get off what I've been talking about. I think if Jaylen Brown becomes the best defender on the floor, that the Celtics will be a different caliber of team when it comes to him guarding whoever is the best player on the floor that's too big for Derek White to guard, right? Because we know Derek White is going to be the point of attack defender for the Boston Celtics this coming season. But what will Jaylen Brown be able to impact? Are you going to be able to hold your ground against some of these power forwards when you get caught in a switch? Are you going to be able to bang down low and all these things? But I do think, to also answer your question, I think if he becomes a scorer who the Boston Celtics can readily rely on for him to go and get a bucket anytime down the stretch, no JT, no Jason Tatum, nobody is turning to him to take that last minute shot. There's 2 minutes left on the clock. You're down by 8. Jaylen Brown, what you got? I think that's the scenario that the Boston Celtics are looking for him to take the next step to the next level. And if he can do both, be a defensive menace for 40 minutes, and that for that last 8 minutes, you are the offensive juggernaut that we all know you can be, I think that's going to be dangerous.
Yeah, I agree. I think if he can actually step his game up in those areas, he would certainly be a handful, to say the least. And particularly in a year where the East is relatively wide open. I mean, I look at Cleveland, I look at New York. Orlando is probably the head of that next level. And then after them, I think it's pretty wide open. The Celtics, they certainly have some things going for them, but they got some things that you got major question marks about, particularly the center position, where basically their best center was their fourth center from last year. That's not usually not a good thing, not a good omen. But my final question before we get out of here is, when you look at the Celtics team, I mean, do you see them as a team that is looking like a playoff team, a play-in team for the play-in tournament, or a team that's just playing it out for the lottery?
Well, I'm going to start by saying this. Boston fans, I don't want any beef. My first playoff game coverage in the NBA was at TD Garden. I am a big fan of everything that y'all got going on. but I'm sorry to say y'all are a playing team this year.
Okay.
And I that is the most respect I can put on this team. Obviously, you just mentioned it. The center position is a weakness for them. That is also a position that got a lot stronger this offseason in the Eastern Conference. No Luke Cornett either, right? So you have to go through all of these teams. You have to go through Cleveland, Orlando. You have to go through the Knicks. You have to go through the Atlanta Hawks now, right? Those are the teams, the Detroit Pistons. These teams are like the top 5 teams in the Eastern Conference that I can see. Maybe Boston gets the 6th seed in the East and squeaks into the playoffs readily, but I'm sorry. I think they're a playing team this year, and that's I say that with utmost respect for the organization and the franchise.
No, that's fair, man. That's fair. I was hoping that you keep it real, and you definitely did that, Ethan. Because I mean, just looking at the roster, you start stacking up against the rest of these, and that's to me that's there's no way of getting around the fact that not only did you not significantly upgrade, I mean, you didn't even kind of get to like ground zero at this. I mean, you are looking at a deficit pretty much every time that you step out on the floor at that center position. And this is a franchise that for the last 2 or 3 years, it's been just the opposite. They've had to pick which mismatch do they want to exploit. Are we going to exploit the ones in the starting lineup, or are we going to bring Peyton Pritchard off the bench and let him do his thing? And so now it's like you have holes that you have to address. And I don't know if you have the depth on this roster to adequately address those. And because of that, you're more likely than not looking at, being number 7 or 8 in the East. And that, that's could be worse. It could be so much worse. But again, I love the fact that again the East is pretty wide open. But certainly, if you had to start putting the pieces in place of where they should finish, Cleveland is at the forefront. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of doubt or questions about that. You look at how they're built, you look at the kind of season they had, you look at their coaching, you look at the continuity that they developed. It's hard for me to put the New York Knicks ahead of them. It's hard for me to put the Orlando Magic ahead of them, a team I really like. I love the things that they've done. I was one of the yeah. I mean, going out the way they did to get Bane was just brilliant. I mean, they literally got the one guy that checks off so many boxes that have been left blank since JJ Redick was balling for y'all, basically. So, so they're going to be a team to watch for sure. But absolutely, the Cavaliers, I think, are kind of the team to beat in the East, even if they aren't at full strength. Which, as you pointed out in our conversation today, it affords opportunities for other guys, and that's really where you find out just how championship mettle your team really is when those other guys can step up and make the most of it. So.
I mean, that's that depth piece that you talked about there, right? I mean, we didn't even really get into Max Strus all that much, but like Sam Merrill hops into that situation, and you're like, well, this is literally the same kind of guy, same kind of player, and now you got Max Strus when you come back. I think DeAndre Hunter is going to be the starting small forward for the entire season. Now you come back, Max Strus, you can hop into the 2-guard spot instead of playing the 3. You're more positionally ready to do that. And now you're just talking about a team that's coming into a depth role that you understand they're just better suited to play every position. And they have more front court depth, although they're older, more front court depth than the Cavs have had in maybe a whole decade. So it's going to be an interesting year, but I definitely think at the top of the East, it'll probably be the Cavs, the Knicks, the Magic, and the Hawks. Those are my top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference. And I'm obviously never going to sleep on Milwaukee or even the Detroit Pistons because they are scrappy. But to that point of what we were talking about with the bigs in the Boston Celtics, you still got to go through Giannis multiple times throughout the year. And that's never fun to do.
No, never, ever. But I tell you what was fun. This conversation. This was good stuff. Ethan says this was good stuff. Before we get out of here, for those of you listening to the show, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the CLNS Media and Celtics All Access YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Celtics content. And one more thing, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video like this one drops. For Ethan Sands of Cleveland.com and the Wine and Gold podcast, I'm Sherrod Blakely, and this is the Big 3 NBA Podcast.